Hi guys, welcome back to Mind, Body and Bits. I'm Georgie.
And I'm Jessica.
And today we have a bit of a wellness disruptor in the building. We have Dan Chappell. As I said, he's in the wellness space. I will get him to explain what he does in a second, but he's the co-founder of Unwell, and he also has a background in high-performance sports. So the perfect guest for us to have today. I have so many questions coming out of my brain already. I'm sure you do as well, but welcome.
Thank you for having me on. Very excited to do this with you both.
Amazing. Well, we both have so many questions for you. One on the founder side of things, and two on the background in physical fitness, wellness, sports performance, blah blah blah. That obviously interests me. And the first one I wanted to ask you is what is Unwell? Can you explain Unwell to us? I think I know what it is.
Yeah, it's a good question because a lot of people don't know when they've just seen it from the outside. So Unwell is essentially a home for health, wellbeing and medical practitioners to run and grow their business. So we create the physical infrastructure, so the real estate, the gym space, the treatment rooms, the medical consultation rooms that they can rent on a flexible basis to service their clients. Plus we wrap around all the other parts that you need to run and grow a business. So we help them grow their business by selling them access to sort of social media support, marketing, website development, all that type of thing. And I guess the most important part of what we do is we wrap a multidisciplinary community of practitioners, which is currently globally the most diverse range of practitioners that sit across the medical, dental and wellbeing hemisphere. So now they have a community of like-minded people that they can bounce ideas off, learn and grow with, and sort of cross-refer between.
I love that. Would you be able to give an idea? Because when people say well-being, healthcare, dental practitioners, I suppose in our space, we know that's a huge range. Could you give some examples of what type of practitioner might be available to people?
Yeah, so at the moment we have around 40 plus different types, so it's very broad. But that sits, currently we have 5 core disciplines, which is train, which covers PTs, S&C coaches, sports scientists, that side of things, anything which requires a gym space or that type of space to run their business. We then have treat, which covers physios, chiros, osteos, massage therapy, acupuncture, anything that requires a treatment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I could do with a day there.
Yeah.
And then we've got coach, which is anything on soft seats. So you've got psychotherapy, performance coaching, business coaching, life coaching, nutritional therapy. And then we've also got dental, which is a new part of our proposition, where we have dentists, hygienists, orthodontists, etc. And lastly, another new addition is our medical offering, where we have everything from private GPs all the way through to consultant oncologists. So it's a really broad spectrum
amazing.
now.
Wow. It's interesting that you've gone down the dental route, because with a lot of healthcare providers and health insurance providers in the corporate world, they stay away from dental. They're a little bit scared. We talk to clients about Bupa or Vitality all the time and that broad offering, but more often than not, dental isn't covered. Why do you think that is?
It's a good question. Probably because it costs so much money. And people, I think, historically don't understand the link between that and general well-being, especially health insurance providers. And it's now coming to the forefront. We know now more than ever how important what you put in your mouth and how it affects your body, but also your dental health, how that affects your general health and well-being. So
it's connected to your heart health, isn't it? Dental health. What were we reading in that? It was
woman? Scary facts that we were reading about in
our newsletter. Scary
and the
connection.
Facts. The connection basically is how your teeth. I suppose it's because it's associated with there's so many nerves in your jaw that connects your brain and. Yeah, I can't remember the exact.
We've gone off course, sorry. But with Unwell, where's the gap in the market that you saw to create that? Where obviously the breadth is something that we preach all the time. It's needed for the accessibility, to simplify the very complex wellness industry, for have everything in one place. Yours is physical, but where's the gap that you saw in the market for this to be a thing?
Yeah, I think it's 2 things. It's the operating model and the experience.
Yeah.
So conventionally, health and wellness practitioners will work for an establishment or a corporate, and they will deliver value for payment. And normally they will get a small portion of that pay packet.
Yeah.
So they will be charged out at, say, £100 an hour, and they'll be given, say, 30 or 25, sometimes really low as like 15 or lower, which makes it really hard for them to run and grow a business and keep helping people, which is why they got into that industry in the first place, which is horrifying that they are having to work so many hours in order to actually earn a decent living themselves. So that's the operating model side of things. So we flip that on its head, and we charge them a hourly fee to rent the space, and they take the lion's share of the money. So it's not a commission structure. They pay a flat fee, charge whatever they want. So it's uncapped earnings, and then they keep everything outside of that hourly fee.
That's really cool.
And then the experience part about, I guess, what separates us is space is a commodity.
Yes.
So anyone can replicate spaces. So someone could come along, raise a big ticket and go, we're going to copy Until Spaces, done. But the experience we create and the services we offer is what differentiates us. So we not only sell space, but we sell growth. So a big part of what we do is how do we help these practitioners through the learnings we've made over the past few years and the time, energy and money we put into it? How do we help them run and grow a business? Because running a business is actually the bit they find hardest.
Oh yeah. Well, take me back 14 years ago when I was a PT, qualified as a PT, started my PT career. And I would have loved something like that because I got paid absolutely sweet F all from working in a boutique gym in Chelsea, which the hourly rate for a client is quite high. I got nothing. So that's genius for freelancers or practitioners. I love it.
I think as well, what's really interesting is, I've been to one of the spaces and it's such like a beautiful experience. And I think so often, particularly this is more from like the therapy or like the coach side, I guess, is lots of the time, if you book in with a therapist, you go to like, I've been to therapy places where it's like a moldy wall or something like that. And it makes you feel like this is meant to be looking after me, but it doesn't. And actually, I just think it's really important you go in somewhere where you feel special. It's a nice place, which it's like they care about me. They're looking after my mental health with a really nice environment as well. And I think that cannot be underestimated. I think it's so powerful because you're like, yeah, I feel like they care about me. I think
it's a choice. You're like it's almost like a membership, right? You're choosing to go there rather than you need to go to therapy and then you go
and you get this
dark.
Yeah.
And I think the bit which we're really clear on is as a consumer who comes to visit one of the practitioners in our space, unless you're really ill, in which case you should probably be in hospital, you don't want to feel like you're in sick care.
Exactly.
And so often you go to these really clinical, sterile environments which feel horrible. You're not motivated to be there. So what we've done is we've redefined the way that healthcare spaces should feel, look, and we've turned it into like what we call a well care facility. So you go there to feel well versus you go there to be sick. And that's made a massive difference, not only to our practitioners who are changing lives, but to the consumers who come in. It's changing their experience around health and wellbeing totally.
And do you find the industry is going into that like holistic well-being way of thinking, which is fantastic. It's exactly how everyone should be thinking. But do you find that people will come and use a certain practitioner in a certain dimension of wellness, and then they might look and see if there's others and sort of merge or float into other spaces, or do they come for one specific reason and then they leave?
So there's I guess a bit of a mix. So majority of people will come through one channel.
Yeah.
They'll come in through a practitioner because you don't know what you don't know, right? They'll come in and they'll go, I'm just here seeing my PT. Normally he covers all my areas. But then they realize that, like I should also be thinking about my dental health.
Yeah.
My bloods. I should get my bloods done. I should be getting some soft tissue work. And it sort of opens the consumer's eyes to all of the possibilities. And I think less of that is us actually going to the consumer and saying, hey, you should be doing these things. And it's more their practitioner being surrounded by all of these amazing and talented other practitioners where they know they can create a much better level of service for their customer by referring out.
Yeah.
So it's seamless and you've got it all in-house. So there's no sort of barriers by saying, you've got to travel across the other side of London for this. It's in the in-house.
So helpful. So good.
Something I was going to say is obviously and you explain sort of like the gap in the market and where that filled, and I think that's really clear to people. What about for you? what was the kind of inspiration behind it? Because I think lots of us can go out and be like, oh, I see a gap, I choose not to fill it. What for you was like, this feels important to me?
So I used to be the person we're solving for. So I used to be a practitioner, and I had experienced all of the different operating models that exist in the world today. So I'd experienced big commercial operating models, the likes of Nufford Health, the gym boxes, the third spaces, where you're swapping value for safety. I'd experienced the freelancer routes where you were paying large amounts of money for really bad spaces.
Yes.
And no community. It felt very lonely. You were a solo entrepreneur trying to grow a business, but you didn't have any support. And then I'd also experienced the sort of subcontracting models, which again, you just have to work so many hours in order to earn any decent revenue. So it was the culmination of those things. And the thing that I guess frustrated me was like, everyone in that industry is doing it because they want to help people, yet no one's helping the practitioner. So I guess Until stems from frustration around a community that needed to be liberated in order to help people going forward. And I guess that's how it sort of started.
Have you been always quite aware of your own well-being? Or did you go through some kind of learning?
It's definitely been a learning curve. Yeah. And I'm still on it. Not solved
Aren't we all?
yet. Yeah. But yeah, I've definitely been on a journey where I've had sort of my eyes opened. I used to be coming from like a scientific background. I used to be weirdly more closed-minded. And
Really?
I used to be really clear around the things that I would and wouldn't do based on scientific evidence versus how it made me feel, or anecdotally, like the research around it, I guess, from a subjective point of view.
Yeah.
And over time, being surrounded by all these amazing practitioners and services that I didn't even know existed, I've become so much more open-minded and aware of what health and wellness means.
Yeah.
Whereas historically, I would have said it just means being fit, or it just means being absent from injury or illness.
And that's that's one of the biggest problems in society right now, right? It's very tunnel vision, one dimensional, and what you're doing is opening up, like you said, a sort of one-stop shop for people to get everything, which is so clever. But I just wondered, you've had obviously a background of high performance as well. Is that your coaching that you were talking about?
Yeah, so I spent the best part of a decade after doing my master's in S&C working with high performance athletes, either in pro sports teams or individual athletes on a sort of freelance basis.
Right.
And yeah, I guess that's where I sort of, from an early age, I had the desire, having played rugby, to better my own performance. And then I wanted to be surrounded by people who were all striving to better that sort of 1%.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's...
Love that. Right, let's get into the founder questions. I said to Jessica when I said, oh, let's ask Dan, I think he'll be quite open about being a male founder. And let's see, let's test you. So obviously being I'm early in my journey compared to you, but being a founder comes with its ups and downs. What's something that you would say has stood out as the biggest struggle for you? I know you have a co-founder as well, and that can come with pros and cons as well, I guess.
Yeah. I think for me, it's the biggest issue I found is time allocation. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is it's not just the hours in the day, it's how you spend those hours. Mm-hmm. And I've made the mistake historically of trying to balance, I really struggle to balance family and friends and loved ones, business, and my health and well-being.
Yeah.
And I know Stephen...
looking at me funny.
Just, common founder problem, I'm sure.
Yeah. Stephen talks about having a certain number of chips in a day and choosing where to put them down.
Yeah.
And I keep repeatedly making the same mistakes and I think it's really normal as a founder because you're always going to be going through ebbs and flows of work, and sort of at different times, you're going to have more time to spend with your family. At different times, you're going to have more time where you're required to spend time on the business. If you've got a really big launch coming up, or if something's going on, which is most of the time, there's always something. But it's for me, it's that trifecta of those three things, trying to find an equilibrium where you sort of sit balanced, like constantly pushing them all up. Because I've historically lost friends, distanced myself from loved ones, or let my health slip to a point where it's really negatively then impacting my day-to-day in the business. And it's just like finding balance. I don't think it's balance, because you never have balance, but I think it's finding a way to keep consistent at those three is the bit I've struggled with most.
Do you have to be really strict with yourself? Is that what the solution is in terms of what's your priority in that moment? Is it friends and family, business? Is it your health? Or is it finding a sort of routine, which is very difficult as a founder to have a routine, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe with your well-being, but with day to day, it's like, you know.
I think it's, I don't know the answer. I think what I've done recently and what I've implemented, and it seems to be going okay, I'm sure other people don't think so, is structuring my well-being and putting that as the foundation. So getting that locked in, making sure I'm completing those behaviors, those exercises, those activities which make me perform well.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I maximize whenever I have a sort of drive in one of those other sections, or time to lean into one of those, whether it's business or friends and family time, I really lean into it. So if I have got time spent with friends and family, I really put emphasis on that, because I know there's going to be a big phase of work coming up, and vice versa.
So you're fully present and fully in when those times come up that you can spend with friends and family. That's important, yeah.
What kind of phase do you think you're in right now?
In what context?
As in, I think what you said about having like the foundation is really important. And it's something I always say to people is like, you can't be all in with your business and all in with your family and all in with, you know, other things as well. So what for you do you feel like is almost taking like 60%, 70%? What's the priority right now?
I think right now it's business. So what I've had to do is get really clear around who I want to spend that other bit of time with. And I've naturally made cuts to that circle, whether it's friendship, less so family members, because I'm really fortunate to have an amazing family who are all super supportive. But I've definitely cut my friendship circle down to the people I actively want to spend time with, who are going to be beneficial to me. And me be able to be beneficial to them as well. Because historically I wasted a lot of time with people I call them like legacy friends.
That's
like friends from school and you think we're not sure we have that much in common.
Yeah, it's just like if you met them today, it's like
politeness
correct.
To meet them.
And it's like we have this view that because you've known someone for so many years, you have to still be friends with them. And it's like, no, you don't.
No.
You're very different people now. And actually the phase of my life I'm at is I'm just about to turn 31, but I've had the past few years. The past few years, I guess the last 5 years, they're so transformative in your sort of growth.
They really are, aren't they?
I would love to know, because I feel like a lot of I think a lot of women talk about like turning 30 and the body clock starts ticking, and that's a conversation, a narrative we hear all the time.
I keep telling Jessica about my Saturn return and she won't have it.
Eye roll. But in terms of like, for men, I feel like it's almost a time where people expect you to be like hustling with your business, nothing else matters. But you said like you've almost had like some learnings and growth over the last few years. What for you has felt like some of the most important things during that time? So it's a big one. You know, I love the juicy ones.
It's a big one. So I think when I was about 25, 26, I realized that I'd become very lonely because I'd been so focused on, actually, I'd say it's probably actually a little bit later. That's probably, I'd say 25. Around the 27 mark, I realized I was massively lonely because I'd just focused on work the whole time. And I had got to a point where my friendship circle had shrunk so much that I'd lost the people that were really important to me. And I had like an alarm signal when I realized that, because like my family are like my recharge. I'll go to them if I'm feeling low or drained, and I'll spend time with them and I'll feel energized and I'll feel relaxed. And I realized I wasn't even spending as much time as I normally would with them because I was so focused on growth. I was going at it every day, super long days. And I'm quite fortunate that I've never had like a what you call like a burnout. I seem to be quite fortunate so far in the fact that I've never even had the alarm bells ringing. I've just had this sort of fortunate bulletproof suit so far, which I'm sort of...
It's hardcore.
Yeah, holding my fingers. But that to me was like a harsh realization where I was like, shit, I've got no friends left because I've pushed them all away.
Yeah.
And I think after that, I've made such a conscious effort to reach out, try and rebuild those relationships and spend time with those people and sort of make sure that they're the sort of people that are lighting me up in the week when I'm feeling
The
down.
loneliness thing is really interesting, something I want to touch on, because you're right in terms of, I think, turning 30 and the years surrounding turning 30, not because of the age, are vital when it comes to your career and your progression and growth for everyone, male and female. I think that it's kind of the time where we kind of know now what we want to do or where our purpose is, and you spend your 20s kind of, you can be experimenting or dipping your toes in different things. But then also you don't want to look back and think, okay, these pivotal years, I didn't work enough and I didn't put in the grind. I hate that word. I hate hustle culture. I hate it. You know, I hate it. Everyone's different. Everyone's capacity is different. But you also don't want to look back and think, I didn't spend enough time with my friendship, my relationships, my family, like, or living life. I'm scared of that. Will I look back and think, God, I spent the best part of 5 years not really living? Do you ever feel like that?
So
my
I've got
work
two
is my
things.
life.
Yeah. So
And I enjoy it, but it's like, are you missing out on something whilst being a founder? Are you missing out on something?
But I think it's interesting you put as a founder, but actually if you think about people who are lawyers, doctors, I feel like it spans across so many people. You know, we're such a time poor society.
Yeah, you know, you're totally
And I
right.
think we're pushed to, like, particularly in London, it's then like you have to earn a ridiculous amount of money to even afford where you live. So you actually don't even get to go and socialise. And it's just this kind of constant...
It's a hamster wheel. Sorry, go for it.
No. So I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, which is...
I like it, reflecting.
Yeah, no, it's more related to...
Take over.
Okay. Which is about, obviously, men and women have slightly different careers
I
because
agree.
of our biology.
Babies.
And I think for men, it can be a little bit more simple and straightforward because we don't have a time clock on our bodies.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot more pressure for women because they know, okay, realistically, I've got a time cap on when I need to have children. But if I want children, and that then goes, okay, you've got this artificial ceiling where I've got the best years of my life, which is also really awkward because you only start to really build your skill set as you get into your late 20s.
I agree.
And that's then going
it gets shorter and shorter, this time gap, doesn't it?
Yeah. So my question back to you would be, how does that affect your mentality and how do you think about that phase?
To be honest, when I started a business, didn't really think about that because I'm now, what am I, nearly 31. You can answer this as well because we talk about women having kids all the time. And it's such a controversial topic, and every woman is totally different in terms of what timeline they see for themselves. Should there even be a timeline? Because women are having babies at 40 years old now.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not great. For me, since turning 30, I don't know if it's psychological, it's a placebo effect, or it's a number thing. Suddenly I'm now stressed. Not because I'm worried about running out of time to have children, but because I know I've got this, like you just said, this peak window to grow and maybe exit or hand over a business, because you can't be a mother and a business owner. You can with help, but I think that's unfair on a woman, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that kind of message of like, you can do it all.
You can do it all doesn't work for a lot of people. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, you can, you're a superwoman, because a lot of people can't do that. So yeah, I now feel, good question, quite stressed about, so maybe it is different for men, about the time I have to scale this business. So I guess let's deflect it right back at you. Obviously, you don't feel that time pressure.
So I do, but in a different way.
Well, this is what I was going to ask, is women, I suppose because of that biological clock, perhaps feel the pressure of like, when am I going to fit in having children in my career? It's something I talk a lot with my male friends of being like, yeah, you have that pressure, but there's also the pressure on me to make as much money as possible, to be the provider in a way.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily go away. Is that, because you were saying the pressures, is that the kind of thing that you were thinking?
I think it's quite unique and it's obviously person dependent. But for me, I want to be a father that's there and present.
Yeah.
I don't want to be someone who is running a business alongside it, spending like 2 or 3 hours like a week with my kid and being away all the time. If I want to do that, I want to be involved and heavily involved. So I'm also, whilst I wouldn't have the disruption from an employment point of view, which is really challenging for women, really challenging, like I get it, I would still have the complexity of wanting to be really present with that child. And I think it's shifting now, but it's moving way too slowly. If you think about paternity leave, most men would love to spend time with their children, but get so little offering. So it's really challenging, because obviously the woman has just spent 9 months growing a human inside them, and then is having to do a lot of it by themselves. Well, I'm not saying the man has an easy time delivering, like we're still working and getting money in and all that sort of stuff, but then the woman's by herself, and it's really challenging. Whereas I'm sure if there's a better way of doing it, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of talk about postnatal depression in men at the moment. Like, it does affect them massively. And particularly friends of mine who've had children, the dad has been massively affected work-wise because of the mental health that comes with it, or the like, oh my God, I've got to look after an actual human being. So yeah, there is not just with, okay, taking away the children conversation, do you feel running a business in this very competitive space, this is me projecting, this very competitive space, that there is almost a time limit? Things are moving so quickly, I guess, because yours is a physical offering, and it's, that's not really going to die, is it? But do you feel that your time frame is shifting because of how quickly and how much change is coming through this industry?
Not necessarily. I think I'm super fortunate to do something I love. Like, I fucking love it. Right?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to?
Yeah. Go for it.
So I'm in this really fortunate position, and I hate to say it as often as I do, because it sounds like I'm boasting or I'm sort of rubbing it in. Like, I love waking up every day and doing what I do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel horrible to me. It doesn't feel like I'm grinding.
No.
Yes, it feels hard, but I embrace being able to create positive change in people's lives every day. So I don't see the next 3-5 years as like, oh, I've got to do this slog, this hustle for this period of time. I see it as I get the opportunity to spend the time doing this.
Love that.
And for me, it's such a fortunate position. And I know that's such a rare thing to be able to say that.
But it's interesting, because at the same time, I completely get what you mean, but it also really frustrates me that it is almost a privilege to be like, the place where I spend 80% of my time, oh, I enjoy it, and I'm really lucky that that's the case. And I think to myself, like, this culture that we live in of like, so many people hate their jobs or dislike their team, or it's just like, my work makes me so miserable, I don't get paid enough, or whatever it is. And I'm like, that just should not be the case. It should be where, like, you can at least have a job where you're like, there's something that I wake up and I feel enthusiastic about every day. And I find it so sad that we live in this culture, which is like, oh, sorry, like, I actually enjoy my job. And that's seen as the rarity.
Yeah. You almost feel guilty saying, I love what I do.
Yeah.
Don't you?
But it's also because I know even friends who would love to love what they do, but either just haven't had the right opportunity. They've tried things. They haven't had the opportunity. They work in an industry where there's little innovation. It's slow moving. You look at the financial industry, it's still shit. And
Tell it how it is.
Yeah. And I think very few people are at the stage when they can really enjoy every aspect.
Yeah.
Because what the amazing thing about being a founder or an entrepreneur is you're creating the life, the business that you want to run.
Yeah.
Whereas
Best bit
these
about
people
it.
are building skill sets. If you think about corporates, they're building skill sets and then being deployed as a resource to deliver an outcome. Whereas we're going, okay, what change do we want to make, and then going after it and building it and shaping it.
And the ability to pivot and adapt and mold is there.
And don't get me wrong, like, there are parts of the day-to-day which suck, right?
All three of us can agree on that.
You both know. So it's like, I'm not glorifying it. I'm just saying it's fortunate that we have the ability to choose what we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to ask you another loaded question, if that's okay.
Yeah, far away.
Why, as a nation, are we so unwell? Everyone has very different opinions and answers to this, but because you're a leader and a disruptor in this industry, why, as a nation, are we so unwell at the moment?
So I've got a variety of answers. Let's
go.
When you mean unwell, tell me more about what you mean by unwell.
Shall I spit some stats?
Spit some stats at me, and then I'll do my best.
Stress-related illness costing the NHS £11 billion per year. It is now 95% of diseases are caused by stress. Loneliness stats have never been so high, increased by 100 and something percent as of last year. And I don't know whether that's a backlash from COVID, or I don't know. Our mental health is declining. Male suicide rate has gone through the roof and continues to climb. And our physical health is £6 billion a year costing the NHS in obesity at the moment. And obviously things like Ozempic have come out, and don't get me started on that. But why do we, maybe I'm talking about the UK, but it is worldwide as well. Why do we keep getting worse and worse and worse?
So I think there's a multitude of reasons as to why it is. I was actually reading the Lululemon Global Wellbeing
Yes,
Report.
I read that too. Fantastic.
Around the stress people feel to feel well.
Yes.
Which is really interesting. I think it was something like 63% of people find the stress of feeling needing to be well stressful, and that it inhibits their actual health.
Yeah,
but I think so often, and like this comes into something we talked about before, is almost this like toxic positivity culture, particularly on social media. And I think very often one of the biggest things I say to my clients sometimes is like, it's okay if you feel shit. It's okay not to feel okay. And it sounds like such a cliche, cheesy thing to say, but if people are feeling more stressed by like, I should feel well, I should feel like I need to look after myself, then it's just this downward spiral. And actually sometimes it's like, it's okay to sit and have a bad day. And I think people need to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. But why are we so unwell? So like physically, why are more people in hospital?
So I'm not sure this is the reason why more people are in hospital, but I think one of the reasons why we're A, as a nation, and B, globally, more unwell is because at the heart of our wellbeing programs and our healthcare systems, especially in the UK, the emphasis is on reactive care. So if you look at the NHS, you look at global spend, majority of that spend, I'd say 85% of the NHS spend, or more, 90%, is on solving an issue after a problem's gone wrong.
We call it crisis point.
Crisis point.
Everything is about crisis point. Yeah.
And actually, if you look at global healthcare spend, both the public and the private spend is going up year on year. I think it's the NHS spend has gone up by 20 billion this year.
Yeah, something
and
ridiculous.
It will continue to grow.
Yeah.
And I think if there was more of an emphasis placed on preventative healthcare and steering,
you're speaking our language.
Steering the ship at an earlier point. There's so much opportunity we have to create meaningful change if we did some better diagnostic suite of services at an earlier point in time. And I think a lot of people's mentality is keep going until something goes wrong, but by that point it's too late. So I think over time we are seeing this shift towards preventive healthcare, and there's from the sort of stats, there's about 12 to 15% year on year growth in that space, which is really exciting. You've got the likes of the Nico Healths coming through, and you've got all these really advanced diagnostic suites of services coming through, which is brilliant. The big problem is there's a massive delta between diagnostics and knowing what to do with it. So you'll do this amazing suite of like tests, you'll get all of this information, but unless you work in the health and wellbeing space, you don't know what to do. It's like the big so what question.
One thing we talk about at Arthur all the time is how privileged this industry is. Now, I know we might have a domestic about this, but like it's so expensive. It's so privileged in terms of knowledge. Like if you look at the general population, they don't have the knowledge on how to look after themselves. They've lost that intuitive movement, intuitive eating, stuff like that. And all three of us sat here, I can say confidently, have the privilege to know what wellness looks like, or know where to get it, or ask someone who knows where to get it. So what would you say to people on that point in terms of how, well, A, it's overwhelming. There's too much information, which is why what you're doing is really clever, because it's all in one space. You know where you're going to get help. But B, do you think there's a problem in how privileged this space is at the moment, and the accessibility that then limits for the general population, most of the population, let's say?
For sure. Let me take one question at a time.
Sorry.
So I'll go.
I get really excited.
So I'll take the second one first because that's the one I remember.
Okay.
So the first one is, the second question you said was, how do we solve the accessibility issue?
Yeah, you're talking about diagnostic testing, DNA, biohacking, like all of this it's not accessible for 85% of the population, if not more, because of the cost of it.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. If you're getting DEXA scans, you're getting really advanced testing, it comes with a cost. And I think over time, those costs will come down. I really applaud anyone who's doing diagnostic tests to help people live longer, healthier lives. I really applaud it, because someone has to do it in the first place to make it accessible at the top end. And then over time, people will make it a commodity. They'll commoditize it to the point where everyone can afford it and it's more accessible. But anytime there's a new entry to a market, a new way of working, new product, it's always expensive and premium first.
Yeah.
And it comes down.
Yeah.
I think I'd love to see that come down faster.
Same.
But that's the process it is.
Yeah.
And over time, it will become more accessible. I think right now, there's still a bunch of really accessible tests on the market. You've got some really basic blood panels, which can be done a lot of the time through the public health service.
Yeah.
You can get basic blood draws. You've got some key measurements you can look at, which require very little equipment. So you can look at some basic anthropometrics around weight. You can look at diet and lifestyle, which doesn't require a lot. I'd say one of the biggest issues is, and it's a curse and it's an amazing thing, is access to knowledge has never been better. It's everywhere.
It's a pro and a con.
Yeah.
This was one of the questions I was going to ask, and actually to both of you. So 2 businesses that come to mind, which are almost like diagnostic tools, as you said. One, Zoe, the glucose monitoring, I guess. And then the second was Fertility, which is all about women's fertility. And so basically you fill in the questionnaire, do some tests, send off the information, comes back to you. Is there, and this might sound like a loaded question coming from my place of ignorance, is there a problem therefore with giving people too much information that they don't know what to do with it? And actually, are we overcomplicating it with all of these tools that are available to people now?
I'll let you go first.
Well, thanks. Yes and no. I think we're in a
Diplomatic answer.
I think we're going to have very different answers, which is great for the podcast. I think all of this technology and diagnostic testing and increased like scientific data that we can get on a consumer level now, like very quickly, click of our fingers, is amazing, because we've lost, what did I just say? Intuitive living, because of, I don't know, social media, how expensive things are, how much information is there. You know, take us back 100 years ago, none of this existed and we were a much healthier society. How did we do that? Because this is maybe a bit of a wish-washy, because I'm not a data science girl. It's you live how you feel. You live to feel good, right? So I think there is a negative in terms of, do we need all this diagnostic testing and expensive site at the moment, expensive kit and stuff like that? No, perhaps not. The positives is it's gaining us so much personalized knowledge. And I think there's a problem with our health society, which God love them. We know we all love them, and particularly me, the NHS. They're so busy, they're so overworked, there's so much issues going on there that they don't necessarily give you that personalised treatment that people really need if they're unwell.
Can I add another question on
Yeah, sorry, I'm
a
on a
bolt
tangent.
on? Do you think that these type of services should be provided by the NHS rather than people making profit from people's health?
Wait, let's let Dan answer the first bit first, and then we'll both. So I think I'm in a bit, on our team calls, like Dave, my COO, is all about tech, data, biohacking, has 2 smartwatches on his hands, and I'm the opposite end of the spectrum. And together, that's why it works so well. We have 2 completely different opinions. I don't want to know any data because it tells me I'm not breathing all the time. So I don't want to know. Or I'm not sleeping well. I don't want to know. I know I'm not sleeping well. Don't have to tell me about it.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion. I think it's very personal to the person. I think men, I'm going to stereotype here in particular, like data more than women. They like to track, your recovery, your sleep score. This is what, again, Dave says all the time. So there's a difference there. My big issue, and this is exactly why, Arbor exists, is it's not accessible right now to, like I said, 85, 90% of the community cannot afford a £40 plus test. £40 cheap for a test, right? I would say like
some
a
of these
glucose
are
monitor.
I was just thinking like the
who can afford
ones,
that?
a few hundred. Yeah.
Some people can't even afford a £5 app a month. So that's where my struggle comes with it. The expert.
So what, remind me of the question, because it's,
So the first one was around, basically there's so much information out there. Is that actually useful to people to have it?
Got you.
And my bolt on was actually, should the NHS be doing this rather than companies making profit from people's health?
Cool. So again, I'll go for one at a time because I'm not great at remembering two.
I mean, I was like, I don't even know.
We're getting really carried away with you.
So there is a lot of information, and you're right. Sometimes there is too much information. I think it's very person dependent on how much information they'd like to see. And I think it can be massively overwhelming for some people. Yeah. And I think the businesses and the organizations that do it really badly are the ones that don't create it and pull it into layman's terms. So they try to make it sound really advanced and really scientific. Yeah. But for the general person who's not outside of our health and wellness bubble, I always think about what would I use my mum as an example. I go like, if she was given this data, what would it do?
Yeah.
And I think 60% of the time we give information in a wrong format or too much information, when in reality you should give them some really simple, tangible outcomes or steps versus data, because data is great from an insight point of view. And I strongly believe if you're not measuring, you're not tracking. And how do you know if you're creating impact if you're not able to track these things? But at the same time, you have to have something tangible. And very few businesses and organizations give both. They go, here's a really clear and easy to understand data set, which is not going to confuse you. But don't worry, here is the simple steps of what to do to change these things.
Practical things to take away from that data.
Correct.
That's all I want, I think, is like, I don't care about the info. Tell me what I need to do.
Yes.
Yeah. So for some people, it's sort of debilitating when you get given a lot of information. And again, go back to my mum, for example, she was given a DEXA scan and they said, oh, okay, you've got osteoporosis. There you go. And it's what the fuck do I do?
It's the so what.
It's like, what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
And actually that's worse, having that level of information, because you now know you're not healthy.
Now you're panicking,
but you don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So I think there's no point of giving data unless you can give a solution.
Absolutely.
And I believe that in any case of the health and wellbeing hemisphere. The second question around should the NHS be delivering those services?
Particularly if you were talking about it, our healthcare potentially should be more about preventative.
Yeah.
That's sort of where that was coming.
So yes, I definitely think they should, but I also am not naive enough to know they're massively overwhelmed. All of the infrastructure in the NHS is set up to deal with acute or chronic reactive emergency situations. So there's nowhere better to go if you've had a heart attack, if you're about to give birth, if you've got cancer. The NHS is bloody brilliant in that regards, and they are set up to deal with that type of thing. Right now, they don't have the infrastructure to deliver preventive healthcare.
No. Yeah.
Maybe long term they will, but right now they're miles apart. And I don't think they should try to be a master of both right now until there's an obvious solution or way of delivering it. Yeah. I think the sort of intermediary step, which is brilliant, is insurance companies are now stepping in to fill that void, but still health insurance is not accessible, but it is starting to bridge that accessibility gap.
It's starting to feed in. Yeah.
And prices are coming down over time, which will alleviate pressure off the NHS. Now, I always think the NHS has to play its major role, and it should always be the foundation of our healthcare system here. But I also think having a private health care industry and network where they are actively pushing preventative will alleviate pressure there, so they can rebalance the books.
Yeah.
And also very innovative, forward thinking. Loads of technological advances come through this, this research. So yeah, I think it is crucial. Are we looking at a future health minister?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm anywhere near academic enough for that.
I was just thinking, I was like, I could buy into this.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
Get me a DEXA scan. No, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I don't. It's very. It is. We would say very individual. I think to the person whether they want that information, whether they want testing, or they just want to. I think ignorance is bliss. But Dave wants everything, right? He wants to know absolutely everything. He wants his DNA test or everything that's going on with his metabolic health or whatever it is. So it's very individual. But
I do think the it's really weird because I have to keep reminding myself that we live in this London bubble, and not only a London bubble, but this healthcare bubble, which is we are in one of the major cities in the world, which is 1% of the world, if that. And there are lots of other cities that are similar, but everyone outside of this has such little information, quality information on what health and wellness actually means. And I think it frustrates me because you see how many like mortality rates across like top 5 conditions, how many of those could be reduced by small daily habits and changes, which is so frustrating because people are blissfully unaware of what they're walking into. And I think I'd love to find a way to make that accessible to everyone in the world.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really powerful message to kind of wrap up on, because I think so often we forget we live in this little world and we're speaking perhaps in almost a language that other people don't understand. And it's actually too complicated. And sometimes you do just have to say to people, like, you should, it's quite a popular thing at the minute, you should just try and eat 30 different, greens or vegetables or whatever it is, plant things, a week. And like for some people, they're like, even that feels complicated. And I think that's it, is you have to think what is really the basics that people can do.
Yeah, when you're talking from a position of knowledge, privilege, and we all work in this industry, right? It's important to note that a lot of people wouldn't relate to the way that we perhaps talk about well-being or our own well-being, I think. But yeah, I think we could talk to you for another 3 hours.
It is really interesting though, and what you just said is so poignant. So I think one of the, and this goes across the board, this is health, wellness, life, business.
Yeah.
That example you used there with, I think it's Zoe's mantra, which is 30 plants a day. I think with all goals for health, business, whatever it is, creating lofty, because that is a stretch target, right? For a lot of people, the baseline is down here. You're asking them to go from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
And we're overcomplicating it and making it stretchy. For majority of people I would say in the UK, outside of London, like going to someone, hey, try and eat 5. Or try and eat 10 is materially different to go for 30. You need to have these combinations. You need the 3Ks, you need kefir. It's like things get overcomplicated. And I think small baby steps is going to make it way more attainable as a goal. And over time, that's when you start to build on that and it becomes less stretchy and more achievable. But it is quite daunting if you've never experienced something. You walk into a world, I know that I've got friends outside of this industry. If I brought them into a conversation and said, this is what you need to do for a diet to live a healthy lifestyle, this is what you need to do from a training, they'd go, fuck that.
Yeah. Bury their head in the sand and then therefore maybe don't want to do it at all because it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
There's a saying at the moment, isn't there? Your well-being to-do list is never ending, which is true, right?
Yeah. And if you look at us, we're in the health and wellbeing industry and we're not even getting it right ourselves.
No, we're not well.
What are your 5 takeaways for if you were to preach to anyone? These are the 5 things I think you should be doing to take care of your well-being, health. What would they be?
I haven't prepared for that, but I always strongly believe, and I'm going to break the answer a little bit, break the question a little bit. So I strongly believe there's a trident that supports health and well-being, which is physical health, mental health,
Yeah.
and social health. I think we should be taking positive steps every day
Yeah.
to better those three.
The 1% rule.
Yeah. And whether you're
Habit
spending
stacking.
whether you're spending 10 minutes a day working on reducing anxiety or reducing stress from a mental perspective, if you're spending half an hour getting a walk or a run or a exercise with friends in brilliant. If you're spending 30 minutes a day with family, friends, boosting that social
Yeah.
battery because it's so important. I feel like those three have the biggest impact pound for pound on any of the other health outcomes I could suggest. So I always say if you can raise that trident, then you're laughing.
I've got a little stat that I think sums that up nicely, is that the health and well-being of your relationships is the longest indicator of your lifelong happiness.
Say that one more time.
So
Do you know Jessica's expertise as well?
Yeah.
You do.
Say it one more
He
time.
did his due diligence.
Yeah.
the health of your relationships in your life is the strongest indicator of lifelong happiness.
It's a bloody good job I've
That's
started investing in that then, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Is it?
And this is why I love what you said there. It's not just about physical health. It's not just about mental health. It's
Social.
social health. It's
Connection
absolutely
is
crucial.
everything, right?
Crucial.
It's everything.
And that's why you're seeing the boom of these IRL businesses again. Like over time, you've seen a big swing towards social media and community, digital communities, and which is one thing. But now you're seeing this huge pivot. Whenever there's a pivot, you'll see a pendulum swing the other way.
Yeah.
So now in real life, communities are now thriving.
Yeah.
And I always say, if anyone's
yeah.
going to invest in a business, like in real life community-based businesses, now's the time to invest.
We've seen it.
Subtle
Yeah.
with fundraising, but that's why you're seeing the
Throw that in
boom.
there.
That's why you're seeing the boom of like the likes of swingers. You're seeing all these different like groups of people. Run clubs.
Run
are
clubs.
booming,
Yeah. Oh my
right?
gosh, run clubs.
People crave it.
Even in
We've
like
had
the
so
dating
much
space.
demand, haven't we, for in-house
Yeah.
events in the last, I would say, 6 months. It's been nuts, but great. But people want that human connection back.
100%.
They really,
Yeah.
they crave it, and that's social health, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's essential.
We always finish the podcast. Again, we could talk to you for another 3 hours, but we've got to wrap it up with what's the best thing that's happened to you in the last week, the worst thing that's happened in the last week, and what did you learn from them?
So, best thing that's happened to me in the past week. It's not happened to me. It's happened. I've been part of it.
That's okay. We'll take that.
Is I mentioned it just before we started, which was spending my Sunday
Yeah.
with my team,
Okay.
which is not a normal thing. It happens irregularly, once a quarter, at a time when we can get together, build relationships, spend time learning, developing, and thinking about how we can better serve our mission. I loved it because it was an opportunity to spend time with the people I don't often get to spend time with across our clubs, and work on that in real life relationship that's not on the other side of a Teams conversation.
Love it.
Love that.
So that's the thing that I enjoyed. The second one was what happened to me this week that I didn't like.
No, what's the worst thing? Or particularly like maybe a negative thing? It could be like your tire burst. I use that example. It could be so trivial
That you've
that
then learned
happened
from.
in the last week to you. And then what did you learn from both of them? We purposely don't prepare people.
Yeah,
For this.
the worst thing that happened to me in the past week. Fuck, I've just got a good life, haven't I? Nothing nothing horrendous
take
has
that.
happened.
That's fine.
Nothing. I've got nothing
That's
to say.
fine. Like it could be I was late for the tube or whatever it is.
Maybe this is a question to end on then. What keeps you in that positive mindset? Because lots of people, something so trivial would happen and they would crumble.
Their world would crumble, yeah.
What's allowed you to stay in that positive mindset?
I often get told this is a really frustrating, in some instances, mentality of mine.
Yeah.
Which is I always figure things are going to work themselves out. So I always don't stress about what's going on because I know I'll always navigate it and I know it'll always figure itself out.
I get told off for that, for having rose tinted glasses.
Why not? Why stress
I
about
know,
it?
I get told off by multiple people, like, you're too positive, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's how I cope.
Yeah.
Let me be.
It'll all be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end.
There we go, Jessica.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you so much for coming to join us for that amazing episode. So much more to delve into. I'll leave all of Dan's information below, as well as the Until website. Go and check it out. You have how many sites in London now?
3 at the moment, with more to come early in the new year.
Okay, well, definitely go. They're beautiful. I've been to 2. They're absolutely stunning. So go and check them out. I'll leave all the links below, all the show notes. And yeah, we will catch you guys next time.
Yeah.
Bye.